Yeah. Oh, sorry, Ronan. We are live, so shush. I didn't do my countdown, so I apologize in advance. I was too busy yelling at Matt to stop dancing, but yeah, that didn't work. Thank you again for joining us. We have asked Renee to hang over for another week, and we are going to talk about the gift mindset. And this is obviously the title of your latest book, but I thought maybe you could take us through, I guess, where you came up with this concept, and I guess maybe some highlights even from the book to get our appetites going. And we'll put a link in there. Come on, let's try and get some sales going here as well. So we put the ads at the front this time, Ronan.
Yeah.
So at the front.
Yeah. Quick marketing. I love it.
But yeah, Renee, tell us about the gift mindset.
Yeah. So the book, I wrote the book last year, but it's been a concept and a mindset I've lived with for many years. And it's all about embracing the challenging and positive encounters we experience. So whether something's great or something isn't, being able to step back and unwrap the gift in that situation. I think everything we go through happens for a lesson, not always a reason, but a lesson. So the book was really born out of the first time when I look back, I didn't know it at the time. I adopted this gift mindset. I'm a very optimistic, resilient person, and I lost my dad when I was 23. And without going into all the story, I was very, very close to my dad, and he said to me, I don't want to see you till you get that job at Mars. So I saw him weekly. Mum and Dad were split up, and I saw him weekly, and he said to me, I don't want to see you for 3 weeks. So I didn't see him. And then I was out with my now husband, Brett, on a movie date, and I'm a bit of an intuitive, and I just knew something was wrong. And I went home, and Mum said, your dad's in hospital, and he'd actually passed away suddenly. He'd had a heart attack. And that was the first time I was like, wow. Anyway, the next morning was my final assessment after 4 months of interviews for Mars, and I went to the assessment. I don't remember any of it now, but I got through it. I didn't tell them. I said I'd had the flu, and that's why my eyes were puffed up. And I got through, and I got the role. And the gift in that whole situation, as hard as it was at the time, was I now have to live my life for him. He was an entrepreneur. He never worked for anyone except himself. He was in advertising, media, rag trade in the 70s, which was quite rare in Melbourne. And I just had this energy, absolute surge of energy that hasn't left me since then. So I share that in the book as my first gift. And that's sort of the crux of it. But basically, I just think companies in particular, businesses need to adopt a gift mindset, to have an open and connected culture where people share mistakes and support each other, and share successes and not keep them to themselves. Because I think these things are the survival guide for someone else. So in the book, just quickly, we go, what have you learnt? We've got a process, GIFT. It's a questioning process to unwrap your gifts, and then your gifts can fall into one of 12 buckets. So we have the 12 gifts: the gift of connection, the gift of optimism, the gift of growth, change, forgiveness, etc. And each gift has a case study, story, interview, and then tips and tools to deepen and develop in those life skills. So it's pretty exciting because the book's for anyone. So
do you find, I guess, that everyone's got those gifts from, because they're lessons, right? Whether we wanted to learn something from an experience or not, it's whether people are actually contributing it. Is that what you're highlighting?
It's use it to progress yourself forward and accept it and know what the lesson is. But the bigger thing for me is share it with others. Share it through storytelling, share it in businesses, share it with your kids. So the book's had, a response from teenagers, CEOs, startups, politicians, you name it, because, it's applicable for everybody. Yeah. And, the gift of forgiveness, I interviewed the amazing Zamil Chowdhury on my podcast, and he had an amazing story around forgiveness and forgiving himself to get through some pretty, tough illnesses, to interviewing CEOs on resilience. So it's to cafe owners, to startups. So lots of diversity.
Well, I know Zam used to listen, so if he's still putting up with us, thank you, Zam. And
we forgive you. No.
Yeah, we forgive you if you're not listening anymore. That's fair.
Don't worry, I'm seeing him next week. I'm flying to Perth. I think you're going too, Renee, and I'll be popping over to Perth. And, yeah. So. Yeah. But look, the book is very much about the gift, which I think is a great thought process, because ultimately for a lot of us that are abundance thinkers or people that want to we look at giving. We always look at giving, and it's the person receiving that we get the joy out of. And I've seen how your energies really, really takes forward when you actually help others and deliver that. What would be a point in your life where you've received something from somebody, that somebody's given something to you that really changed your thinking about them and sort of changed your way of thinking yourself?
Yeah. Probably it would probably be a leader early on in my career that I really. I was quite young, but I really admired how he was, and I sort of almost replicated what he did, which served me really well. But the thing he taught me, the gift he gave me, was the gift of vulnerability. He actually admitted some things he wasn't great at that really you wouldn't think so. It really surprised me. And what I learned from that was it's okay not to be good at everything, but to surround yourself with people that have strengths that you don't, hang out together and leverage that to build a strength-based team or business. And I also I've only ever had one shocking manager. I call him the gift that keeps giving. And he was a gift. Because I went, everything he is, everything he does, I will do the opposite.
The opposite, yeah.
So yeah, you can. I think it's two sides of a coin. It's the adversity and the positive stuff. I think they're quite. It depends what side you flip it on, but even successes. Too many people. I'm guilty of it. Will have to have something great happen or do something great. We're all guilty of it and move on. And I think sharing how you've done that with others. And not keeping it from others, because why not be in service to those around you?
I think also
the gift is in what you resist, and that's normally a great way of starting to figure out some of the lessons you kind of need to learn, and it takes a little bit of self-awareness. We've talked about this in other times as well. Often, the second you react to somebody, it's normally a reflection on something inside you that's right. Gift or a lesson you need to learn. So you might think, oh, that's a really pushy salesman. I need to figure out that, oh, maybe I'm a pushy salesman myself, and I'm pushing an agenda that I want. So that's a great way of figuring out kind of the gifts that you need to learn, for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's called the mirror. So people we gravitate to usually have traits we have within ourselves, and people we repel usually have something in them that we don't like about ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a brain fry, that one, but yeah. And that's going. Yeah.
I was just thinking, because your book talks about finding the gift or the lesson, from an experience. Why do people? Because I've got ideas on it, but why do people not try and find, I think commonly in maybe a negative experience, not try and find that lesson? Why do you think that happens?
Yeah, there's 7 key reasons why in and out of the workplace. The main ones that I've researched and seen are suppression. A lot of people suppress things, not express them, sometimes on purpose, but sometimes they just don't have high self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Another one is they don't want to delve into something bad that's happened, because that's bad, it's in the past, so they don't deal with it, and they don't always accept it for what it is. A big one we're seeing that's a common one is making the time for self-reflection. A lot of people think that's indulgent, and I always think, we would never cancel a meeting with somebody else in our diaries, but yet how often would you cancel something for yourself? Yeah. So I've got companies doing Win Wednesdays, Failure Fridays, and locking forums and creating a safe space to do that, and jealously protecting it so they make it happen. They're the main ones. And one I got back from quite a few people that reviewed my book They said, oh, wow, that barrier around using success as a secret weapon. They see that a lot. So some people hide things because they don't want to share it, or they feel like they're gloating if they share it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're the main ones, but it all comes back to self-awareness, which takes self-reflective time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm terrible like that personally. Like I don't like
Yeah.
talking about good things, and whenever something bad happens in my life, I don't want to learn anything from it because it's such a negative experience.
And you want to move on. And that's common when people are optimistic. Even when I wrote the book, and I'm happy to share this, and we had the editing, the structural editing done, they actually said to me, Renee, there's hardly any personal stuff about you in here. And it wasn't, I know the irony in it, right? But I felt self-indulgent sharing stories. So we ended up taking 3 client stories out. That was a bit awkward. It was like, oh, sorry, you got cut. And I put in the story of my dad and my dad's family coming out from Italy under the gift of courage, and my IVF journey, which I was very open about, a 5-year unsuccessful IVF journey, which taught me the gift of acceptance. So I've had amazing feedback on just being so open about that, and people have learnt from it, which is so rewarding. Yeah.
Well, I was speaking about that exactly this morning at breakfast with a great friend of mine who was on that journey, and it doesn't. It's just not shared. We talked about miscarriage, and it's just not shared. And yet, like as soon as we went through one, my wife was told by 2 aunties and her mother that she'd never known that. It's just not shared. The IVF story is not shared. So you feel that you're left alone. So the gift of giving is to actually say, these are the points, because it allows people to be connected. I know, Tony, you've had a lot of things that have happened to you. Ronan, the same. What would be the lessons that you've learned from a particular thing that's happened to you? And what did you take out of that? Because I thought it was quite interesting that Renee said it's the lesson, because a lot of people turn around and say, this is the reason. And it's very hard to take that, because you go, well, if God or whoever you believe in has this is the reason, you go, well, he's an arsehole, or this is just not happening. The lesson is a lot easier to take, to take from that. So, Tony, Ronan, what were something that you've taken as a lesson?
I know, Matt, you and me used to have a lot of, I would say, passionate discussions or arguments, because we met because we've been both through so much. And I was telling you about how I lost my son, and then you were telling me what have you this and that, and I was like, I don't want to bloody be able to help people. I don't want to have anything come good from this. Like that doesn't help me in my situation. But the thing I do know that I do like about everything is actually talking about it. I do like that it does give me this ability to help others going through anything, because it is so harsh. So and if I'm so open with it, then it helps others be open with whatever journey they're on. And that's really important, because I know I felt extremely alone. And this is the other thing. I had years of feeling extremely alone. So I don't want to help others. I've been alone for years. Like, why would I give a crap about helping others? And then you start to go, wouldn't it be nice if someone right at the start said, without me prompting it, just, you know what, I've had this happen to me. And then you go, what? You're just able to talk about it, I noticed that's what helps is when I'll meet someone at dinner and just go, I've had stuff go on. And then as I start to pick that they've got some depth to them, I'll go, you know what, this is what's happened, And then it just totally removes any barrier. And although sometimes I've sat next to people with a similar story, or I've been introduced to people with a similar story, it's more about that it removes every barrier, and then you start to be on a level of consciousness with someone else that you'll never experience anywhere else. And that's what makes my life feel better. So that's a lesson I've got. And I do like your wording, Renee, a lot on that lesson, because I know me and Matt, I was a dick to him, going, nothing happens for a reason. It's all bullshit. I was I
used to say that though, and thanks for sharing that, Tony. I always said everything happens for a reason. And then, you know, my sister, as you know, got diagnosed with breast cancer just before COVID. And I actually sat there and went, what the hell? What's the reason? And it, you know, gifts can be, we talk about this in the book, they can be past, they can be hidden, and they can be future. But if they're right under your nose, it's hard to see what the lesson is. Took me a few weeks, and then I went, you know what the lesson is in this? COVID's hit. I can save my business because we were hit really hard. The lesson is to be in gratitude for what you've got. And you've got your health, if nothing else. And that's what got me through. Not saying, you know, it's a great situation and painting a golden paintbrush over it, but I really think it can help you go, what is the gift in this? It could be being in service to someone else. It could be just sharing it with someone else, like you said, Tony. And that's connection. That's true connection when you can be raw, you can be real, you can be vulnerable, and show your scars. You know, you'd all would have heard of the Japanese sort of trend, wabi-sabi. So that's like all the cracked coffee pots and the cafes that look like they've been demolished, but they've been done like that intentionally.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Yes. So it's swept through homewares in Australia in 2017, and I wrote a big article on it that got a lot of traction because I said life's a bit like that. We've got to look at the beauty in imperfection. And then, you know, Japanese also have kintsugi, which is where they gild pottery with gold to make it more beautiful than before. And I talk about it in the book that the gift mindset's a bit like that. You can leave it raw or you can polish it up a bit, but it's never going to be how it was before. And you've got to embrace that, you know.
Renee, you touched on connection there, and it was in the previous interview. It's this theme that recurs through. So let's quickly, as we sort of wrap this up, talk a little bit about WHAM. So WHAM is a connection and a collaboration between yourself, Matt, and me. And one of the things that I'm really excited about it is that you eloquently put it. It's about connection, contributing, and collaborating, and going through that process. And fast forwarding, I think, that process of how do you do that? You know, some people sort of connect and it takes them a long time to achieve that. I really know, like, and trust this person. So let's briefly talk about what is WHAM and where you think that the value of that is.
Yeah. So WHAM, women and men supporting each other. You know, it's an event where, like we've talked about, we want to get like and unlike-minded people. Because I think if we're all the same, how boring. So diversity in every way. And it's going to be a place where, you know, we can connect at what I call an essence level with a few people and have these quality connections, opposed to just a typical networking event, which this isn't, where you just get to meet everyone, first names, and walk out, and there's really no one you're going to connect with probably again. So, you know, super excited. It'll be great, you know, great conversation. We're going to have the theme of connection. So just some thought-provoking questions and a few stories to share over amazing food. So, yeah, cannot wait for it. It's going to be awesome.
And Matt, you originally had this idea with Renee. How did that kind of germinate, and what's the kind of, I suppose, the underlying sort of thought process behind doing this?
Well, it pretty much started with OMSB, which was just about my mental health and connecting with men that could do something. And they were quite successful, are very successful. And Renee sort of approached me and said, how about doing something with for women? And then we sort of discussed it. And most women's groups are fantastic for women, but we both felt that, we both felt that there was something really missing with that. That was there's an argument between men and women. Well, I've got a mum, I've got a grandmother, I've got, you know, cousins, daughters, sisters. We're all connected, And what we wanted to be able to do was just have that connection and those discussions rather than the media, which seems to be wanting to split us apart or divisively approach us. So to get some really intelligent women and some really intelligent men and put them in the same room. I mean, one thing is, and there's a very good friend of mine who said this, he said, look, the men still hold the keys. Like, we get very far and we want to be able to do this, but we want mentors that are going to help us be women step into that role. And I know a fantastic bunch of women. I know a fantastic bunch of men. So does Renee. So it's about putting those in a room where we can pass the keys and look at that. If I look at one story, and it might not make sense, but the temperance movement a while ago was very much about women standing up and saying, enough's enough. Men took the money. Men, the kids were starved. They got kicked out of their houses because they didn't pay. And the woman was saying, we want the money. So they stood up and their hundreds and moved forward. But it wasn't until men turned in the politics, allowed that to sort of happen and stepped that through the door, that real change happened. It's a combined thing. It's not men and women. It's together we can do this. So in a small way, Renée and I wanted to sort of do that. And Ronan, with yourself, put this together and actually start it an action. Rather than talking about it over coffee all the time, just set up an action and set a format that can actually be taken by a lot of people to drive this out. You know, that's what we want to be able to do. Renée's amazing with her energy about that sort of focus. But if you do not take an action, it's all for naught. Nothing happens. It's just another discussion.
That's right. And I think the other thing, you know, and nothing against all women's groups, you know, I speak at a lot of women's events, and something, you know, and I was very open about it, and I am, is a lot of women will come up to me after an interactive lunch, whatever, and say, wow, I really want my manager or my peer who's male to get this. And that's when it was literally like, wham, we need, you know, we've all run lunches with men and women, but this is more focused as in a really even split and really strategic as far as the people that are there and the people that are going to really show up and be all there. Yeah.
So no mansplaining. So
no
as you said, an equal split of 50-50 and that collaboration. Yeah, it's so true. Thank you.
Yeah. So exciting. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think we are running out of time. So thank you so much for joining us again. It was absolutely lovely. And thanks everyone for listening. If you have any questions or comments, post them down below and we'll get back to you straight away. We'll also put a link to Renée's book because that'd be lovely to share. We'll put that in the description, and feel free to reach out to all of us on socials. So thank you. Have a lovely evening.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well done.
Cheers, guys.